Working with type. We're going to animate some type today. This first video is going to be going over just some basics. Um, and what I have set up here is a composition with the words holy smoke. Should it be holy smokes? Holy smokes? Holy smoke? Holy smoke. I don't know. Now I'm thinking maybe it should have been holy smokes. Well, anyways. Flies on screen, has a nice little drift, their counter directional drift, and then boom, we get a transition out of here into a blue screen. So let's break this composition down and see exactly what's going on, and we'll recreate it. I will maybe just, you know what, I'll show you a trick. How about this? Something I don't really think I've covered yet. I have all of these really nice layers here, but I want to make it all over without having to start a new comp. So first thing I can do is just turn the visibility for all those layers off by clicking on the eyeballs on the left side of the timeline window. It makes them go away. But they're still here. I can still see them visibly in the timeline as layers. So maybe I don't want to see those. There's this tiny little button that has a guy peeking over a wall and his nose is sticking out. You can tell what that is. That's the shy layer feature. So if you were to shy, I just clicked and dragged all the way down, he hides himself behind the wall, so he's no longer peeking over it. But I still see my layers because there's a master button. Hide all layers for which the shy switch is set. Boom, I click on that and they just kind of go away. They're still there, but they're out of the way. This is really handy if you're ever just trying to like focus on a few particular layers and you've got like 30 layers in your comp and it's really kind of confusing, whatever. You can just shy the ones where you're like, okay, I'm done with those. They're animated. They're all good. Let's just kind of sweep up a little bit and I can focus on the animation or whatever that I need to do now. Good little trick. All right, now a new background layer. I'm going to use my rectangle tool. My rectangle tool is going to give me a shape layer. I have a fill set to a radial gradient. And my radial gradient, if I want to look at the color for that, is going to be a light yellowish orange in the middle and a nice rich orange in the background. The outer edge. This is the entire background. If I just want a solid that fills my screen, I can double click on that rectangle and it just puts it in for me. So it's the exact dimensions of my composition. There is this little gradient handle now. Notice my gradient is very tight in the middle. I'm going to grab this little handle and stretch it out somewhere around like that. This is my gradient radius. Obviously, you should be able to tell that. That looks pretty good. The gradient can be moved wherever you want it. It could look like a sunrise or just over on this side or something. I'm going to leave it in the middle for now. But that's how you work with gradients and actually edit that gradient. Something you should know. I'm going to change the name of that layer by clicking on the name shape layer and hit return. And I'm going to do BG for background. And I don't want to touch this anymore. It's good. I'm done. I'm going to lock it. So that layer is locked. Okay. Now I'm ready to animate my type. So I'm going to get my type tool. It's the T. There is horizontal and vertical. You'll probably never use the vertical. I'm just going to come over onto my composition and I'm going to click once and I have a cursor. I can type in my word holy. I'm going to select it with my selection tool since I am done typing what I needed. You can see that there's my layer of type and it says holy, number 2 because there's already one in there that's hidden called holy. So just trying to keep it organized for you. When you type, your type might look different than mine, it might be smaller, different font. You'd want to get your character palette window visible if it's not already. Usually it just pops up as soon as you start using the type tool. So I can see my character palette is here. I have all my different fonts, my styles. I can choose the color, and I changed the color of the type to a blue, a nice complementary blue, something like this maybe. A little lighter. Works for me. And then, so that's your fill color. You have stroke. If you wanted a stroke on this thing, you'd click on the stroke. At this point, there is a red slash through it. That means there is no stroke. But if you wanted one, you could click on, the white and give it a white stroke. Or you can click on that swatch and pick any color you want. I don't really want a stroke, but I'll show it to you anyways. I think white was probably better looking anyways. I don't like it, but there it is. You should know that you can put stroke on your text. Here's the size, and I'm going to increase the size of my type. Holy, it's funny, the more you look at it, the weirder it looks. Doesn't look spelled right. Isn't that great how words do that to us? So I'm going to make it, a good size, maybe somewhere around 130. You have your leading, which is the space between lines. There are no lines here. There is one, so this wouldn't really apply. You do have your tracking, so I could space my letters out more or bring them closer together. And it's kind of important to see what happens when you bring them together. Notice that there is a hierarchy of layering. Okay. Just take note of that. Holy. And then below that we have our stroke width. So I can make my stroke really fat, really thin. But like I said, I don't want one. But just so you know, you change it here. You should also notice that that hierarchy of the stroke plays a factor too. So if it gets too big, it starts to cover up other letters. That's where this comes in. Do you want stroke over the fill? Do you want fills over the strokes? Do you want all fills over the strokes? That pops it out on top, or all strokes over fills. So you have some options there as well. But like I said, I don't want it, so I'm going to go back up to my stroke guy and I'm going to click no stroke. And you've got your vertical, horizontal scales, baseline shift for specific letters, and so on, all caps, and things that you should be used to from our other Adobe programs. If you ever want to edit your text because you spelled something wrong, or you want to just tweak a particular letter, you just double click in there and it highlights it all, and then you can click or drag and get specific letters or whatever. Once you're in it and you want to get out, the best thing to do is to hit enter on your number pad if you have one. If you don't, just go get your move tool and you're good to go. So I want holy smokes. I'm going to do smokes this time because I think smokes should be the way it's done. Holy smokes. I could get my type tool and type again somewhere, just place a cursor in there, or I could use my duplicate. I like to move fast and easy, so if I do a Command D, I've got a duplicate and I can just drag that down. I'm holding Shift to keep it aligned, and now if I double click on it, I can type in smokes. Holy smokes! There it is. I'm going to scale that down because I want it to be roughly the same width as holy. Sometimes I like to just move them up on top of each other. S's and things with rounded edges to your type should go a little bit beyond. It's just one of those weird rules. Okay, holy smokes. Select both of them, put them in the middle. Hey, you know what I like to do to make sure I got things in the middle is I like to use my my overlay for title safe, which is right here. Title and action safe. Boom. That is also a shortcut of the quote key on your keyboard. Quote, boom, boom. What I like about it is it shows me my centers. So I can say, all right, the center of this text is right about there. And I know that I'm good, and then I'll just turn it back off so I don't have to see it. So here's holy smokes. I don't know if it should be smokes, but I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it because we're good like that. So how would you animate it? These are just layers that have the same properties as anything else that we've worked with so far. If I open it up, you see that there's first the text property, and then underneath that's transform. So there's position, scale, rotation, and opacity. All right. Oh, and of course your anchor point if you needed to scale from a certain place. One thing you should take note of is that my holy and smokes layers were, I'm going to go to the paragraph panel, were set up with the text centered, which means the anchor point for each one is going to be in the middle of my type. It's going to find the middle, and that's where my anchor point is. You can see it right there. If the text is set to left alignment, then the anchor point is off to the left, and if it's on the right, there it is on the right. Something you should just take note of, just because if I was to have this set up as a right or left, rather, aligned text, and I put it back in the center, and I did something like scale, it's going to scale it from that anchor point. So that comes in handy, but it might be surprising. It might catch you off guard. You might be like, oh, I wanted it to scale from the middle. Shoot, what's going on? Well, it's just because your text was set up as left aligned or right aligned instead of center. Now if I scale from the center, it scales from the center. That aside, let's look at the position for both of these. I'm going to do Option or Alt-P to lay down a keyframe for both of these guys. And look at it, did it at frame 0 and slapped them right in the middle. That's where we're at. But I'm just going to grab holy, and I'm going to grab shift as well, hold down shift. I'm going to move it off to the side, and it just recorded, it re-recorded that data because I haven't moved my playhead. So I want them both off. Frame. And in about 15 frames, I suppose, maybe even quicker, maybe it's like, well, I'll try 15. Now I want them to come out, and I'm not going to go all the way to the center because there's a little bit of a drift going on. So they're going to go zoom. But like I had it in the example, there's a bit of a drift for roughly 3 seconds. I'll just go to 3 seconds. It's kind of a general rule. If you have a small amount of text on, like a name, directed by Greg Twig, you should give your audience 3 seconds to read it before you move it away or make it fade out or cut, whatever. General rule, 3 seconds for about 3 words. If you have a lot more words than that, then you're going to need more time. So since I have a little bit of drift, I'm just going to go and move this one to the left and move this one to the right. Something happens, and this is very important to know as an animator. Something has happened. Here's the deal. We've set up keyframes, and then we introduce a third one, and something happens. We slide in, great, and we have our drift, but then about halfway through it changes direction again. Something is happening, and what it is this, it's this darn auto Bezier stuff where because we're moving time and then moving the layers and recording position, it automatically tries to throw in a curve. Even though it's a straight line, what it's doing is it's bending past the point where you want it to go and then coming back. So you need to get rid of those extra handles that are stretching the direction. And you can only do that by using the Convert Vertex tool. And I have to go and click on those points and make sure that they have no, and do it for each layer, no handles sticking off for those points. So at this point, let's see, we fly in and we have a drift and we don't go back. There's no going back. You should definitely take note of that and get used to what's going on. If I were to draw what's going on, I'll just show you real quick with the pen tool. You have a point for position and then another point, except instead of it just being 2 points in a straight line, it's a point with this handle going like, this basically. So see that curved line? It's going like that. And that's what we're getting rid of when we click on those points with the Convert Vertex tool. I'll get rid of that layer. Okay. Now we got the flying in and then the nice drift of the text. You could ultimately have it fly off now too, if you wanted, instead of it having a shape layer come out in transition. So this is pretty typical. Flying in text, it holds and drifts and then flies off again. If you were to look at my example of the earlier text, you would notice that when that text is flying in, it's not crisp and clear, it has a motion blur to it. So if we enable motion blur for both of those layers of text and then turn motion blur on for the comp itself, you should see that the text flies in, has a blur, lands and drifts, and since it's moving very gently there is no blur, and then flies off again and there's a blur. The other thing we can do would be to let the text accelerate off. We don't need to see it accelerate on because it's just flying in off screen and lands. But if we wanted to take off, speed up, I would take both of those keyframes, keyframes number 4 basically, control click on them, and tell them to ease out because I'm leaving them, right? So we've come in and then they accelerate off screen. So if I were to watch this in a RAM preview, flies in, drifts, we read it, and goes off again. It's real tight. And this would be a great title sequence treatment where I'm introducing actors or the people involved in the film, and I would just keep repeating this over and over again. Maybe instead of them coming in from the same directions, maybe text goes from the top down and the bottom up, and they meet in the middle and then split off the sides or something like that. You can have a lot of fun. Or they come in diagonally maybe. That would be kind of a good little treat as well. So there's very basic animated text, just with the same attributes that we've been working with so far. In the next movie, we will get into more unique properties of text and how we can animate those. You're going to love it.